Day 4 of Hercules week, as we get into the vehicles that tend to confuse some people, because what you are looking at is not a bulldozer. This is a payloader. There's a distinct difference between the two. I'm at a loss of what they are, but take my word for it. This is a payloader, and more than that is a payloader named Structor. Taking a look at him all the way around, he is a big, solid block of plastic. More so than the others I've called big, solid block of plastics. Because there's no hollow bed, there are no treads to get in the way. It is just solid green from head to toe. Or front to back. Whichever you prefer. Whichever makes more sense at the time. You can also see he's very complete all the way around. There isn't really anything showing that really gives it away that, well, this might be a robot in disguise. Unless you know what you're looking for, but we will get to that in a bit. Let's get into the finer details now, shall we? Here on the cab section, which again is now small as it was before. A lot of little paint apps, so a little bit of silver, some of the gunmetal gray for the windows, little tiny red and yellow lights. You can also see those same red lights here in the back. Some extra detail added into the sides. You can see a little bit of silver through this section, as well as some gunmetal gray, a little bit more silver down there in there. And you can see his suspensions molded in. Unfortunately not painted, but it's still a nice little touch for them to add. You can see here, engine, I assume, or, okay, I'm just going to assume it's the engine because there are exhaust pipes coming out of it. Extra bars have been painted in silver as well. Here in the rear, the grille painted in gunmetal gray, little tiny silver lights, and again, yellow and red, I assume turn signals of some kind, painted in very nicely. Here in the front, seriously, all solid green plastic. The only part where it gets broken up is here in the front, where you can also see some silver paint apps coming through on the purple. Yeah, it's a little too broken up in here if you ask me, but you know what, at least it's, it does keep it from being a complete solid mass of lime green, so no real complaining about it. The one thing I was going to mention, and now we bring it up, yeah, what you're seeing here is the robot mode arm. Yeah, if you didn't notice it before, it's incredibly obvious now. This is the worst offender of the floating elbow of the entire set, because this one is intentional to get this to fit. I'm not quite sure why. It doesn't really go flush with the rest of the toys, so it's not really filling any gaps or fitting in very well. And I don't know, knowing that it's the arms, it just looks awkward, like it's half transformed. That's pretty much the only downside of the vehicle mode I can point out, though. Huge tire, so yeah, he rolls. And the bucket actually works quite well. Aside from just being able to lift it up that way, you can also have it dump forward or remain forward as you lift it up. Again, the fake hydraulics that have been present through all of these toys so far, well, most of them anyway, they exist here as well. In fact, you can actually see it coming out the top. This is just the beginning, because we have accessories. And oh boy, do we have accessories. For starters, he gets guns too, and again, they're guns that I actually like the designs of. Little tiny handheld rocket launchers of some kind, I guess. He's got several attachment points for these. Here in the sides, these seem to be the official default to fire them forward. You can also put them up here if you want, though they're just going to hit his floating elbows. Yeah, the rocket thing, you can point to the back. Yeah, that's getting old by now, I know. But there's something better. These little tiny wing parts. They have little things that could pass as guns and blasters if you really want them to, but why would you? Especially when you can do this with them and create the world's very first flying payloader. Oh, come on. You have to give that credit. That is awesome. Let's make it more awesome. There are peg holes for the guns. We can make this a heavily armed flying payloader. It is the least aerodynamic design I've ever seen, especially considering it's got a bucket in the front. But you know what? It looks awesome. It's hysterical in its ludicrousness. I'm not getting much sleep this week. It's still fun. I mean, there are different arrangements, of course. Again, you can peg these into these side holes as well. And in fact, the guns have holes on top as well, so you can actually extend the wings by combining them together into even larger wing sections. They're not going to get you off the ground any easier, but it's versatility that I love in these accessories. I mean, all around, between how solid he is and just how much you can do with these extra parts, I have to give this vehicle mode a huge pass. I will even forgive the easily exposed arms. That's how impressed I am. Let's see if the robot mode can stand up to that. In robot mode, Structor probably stands as the cleanest and most evenly proportioned of all of them. Until you turn him around and realize he has a ton of backpack on him. Yep, there's the rear section of the vehicle, there's the bucket, there's the cab, and it all kind of just crams and accordions together. And they were so clean to this point, too. Oh well, he's got huge heel spurs to help him deal with that, so hopefully he's gonna keep his balance the rest of the review. Anyway, let's talk the toy rather than just nitpicking the backpack. Here we see in the head, he's gone for the faceplate again with the diamond cut eyes. Once again, they've got this forehead thing going. I don't know, it's like this Kit from Knight Rider visor thing. I don't know. You got a lot of little details going into his chest. I will say that they actually do come with more. There are little pegs, little silver ones, that can actually go here if you so choose. I choose not because they tend to put stress marks on this plastic. So I'd rather leave the vacant holes. But it was nice of TFC Toys to actually think of that. There is a lot of silver in the chest to break up the purple anyway, and some gunmetal gray there in the midsection, going down into silver on the top of his belt line. Yeah. Once again, they seem to really like putting a little bit of silver here on the hip detail, as well as here on the side of the knee. They're painting the articulation points. You can see the rest of the detailing is pretty much incorporated from the vehicle mode. Everything after that you've pretty much seen before, especially because the arms are sticking out so blatantly. So that's pretty much the nutshell of everything that he's got going detail-wise. I mean, yeah. We can look into articulation as well. The neck does move around. It might be a little bit restricted depending on how far you can get your head out of the chest. Universal joints on the shoulders, as well as the bicep swivel. There's those floating elbows, and you can see he's definitely the worst offender of them. No wrist swivel, though they can bend inward if that does anything for you. He does have a waist joint. It's only going to get so far, though. Also, universal hips. Not ratcheted this way, but forward and back, yep, they click into place nice and solid. Speaking of nice and solid, the knees are carried over from the transformation. They are incredibly tight knee joints. No worry about them losing position. And there is a swivel above them if you need any extra articulation. So, not the best of the articulation bunch in this set, but no slouch either. He's got everything that he really needs to pull off some decent poses, and that's all I really ask. Once again, we can look at the weapon accessories. Now, of course, they can peg into both of his arms, and also, because it carried over from the vehicle mode, this one can actually mount them as arm cannons, since I know that is what a lot of people like to do with them. However, there are far better uses for those slots. Number one, you can still store the weapons down here if you want, as well as, well, I knew it would happen. See, I told you. Gotta make sure those heel spurs are nice and low to keep them balanced. These, luckily, also have holes in the top, so if you want, you can also combine them into a double barrel cannon. Just for the sake of uniqueness, I'm gonna leave it like that for the rest of the review, just because I can. Let's talk of those wing accessories again, shall we? Well, here they want you to be kind of dull. I want you to peg them into these square holes here on the side and just fold them down. Now, I'd be lying if I said this looked bad. I mean, it actually does add a little bit of definition to him. It gives him a little bit more character than the plain Jane robot he stands before you right now. But I just find it a little uninspired, you know? That aside, let me show you the last trick here, and this is something I want to point out on all of these guys. There are so many extra holes and pegs on these guys that there's a lot you can do with all their weapons and accessories, especially if you start mixing and matching. For example, these pegs over the shoulders are just for putting these guns in place here over the shoulder, giving him some very nice double barrel cannons on his shoulders. Yeah, I am not getting much sleep this week. Excuse the repetitiveness. But I do love that they have left so many different display options like this. I mean, those pegs really have no other reason than to make him look even more awesome this way. Really, the only thing that bugs me about the backpack is that huge bucket just hanging behind his head. I mean, you'd think there'd be some easier way of dealing with that. I mean, though I will admit, I mean, it is higher up than I've seen before. I mean, it certainly does a better job than this official Hasbro release that has absolutely nothing to do with TFC Toys Structor. Though, I can't help but shake the feeling that the designs this time are kind of similar. Even the head. Whew. Yeah, I'm sorry. That can creep me out for a second. Honestly, I'm a little torn on Structor. I mean, the vehicle mode is awesome. It's probably the most solid of the series, not only in just sheer structure, but also in how much you can do with his accessories, and the working bucket gimmick is a nice touch too. But that backpack, oh man, that is just such a hindrance. I mean, I know why they went with that decision. I mean, it's going to come into play when we combine them into Hercules. However, as an individual robot, it takes from the articulation, and it gives him so many balance issues. And otherwise, I actually like him. I mean, if you're looking for one that's in classic stylings, you're not going to get much closer than Structor. I mean, the proportions are very clean and even. Probably the most normal looking robot of the batch, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Bottom line, he's got a ton of things going for him, but the few things going against are really hard to ignore. Still, not a bad toy by any means. And with that, we are officially winding down the week. Stay tuned. Tomorrow, more green plastic, more construction vehicles, and more of me finding ridiculous uses for all their accessories.